Good morning, everyone. The special sessions for the budget hearings is back in session. Our guest today is our county engineer, and Mr. Bossman, I'll just turn the program over to you.
All right. Good morning. Thank you for your time and interest in our budget for 2019. I'd like to talk to you about the budget and also in the context of our budget, the 5-year plan that we have for road and bridge expenditures. So just as a review or outline, wanted to point out a change in accounting methods that has some bearing on how things are appropriated for the coming year. Historically, under the governmental accounting procedures, we have depreciated the value of our roads, and there's been a lot of effort and time spent in doing something that really we don't retire our roads ever, so they're rarely ever. But that's been the procedure. But there's another option available to us that we are going to be utilizing in conjunction with the auditor, called the modified approach, where basically we're no longer depreciating the value of our roads, but we're establishing the value and then committing to keep those maintained at a certain level, and have a procedure in place to rate our roads and evaluate the condition of our roads, and a commitment to keep them at that level. So that I'm telling you all that as background because that shifts some of our past expenditures that have been expended as capital expenditures are now in the services and charges side of things. So you'll see some not big differences in total numbers, but differences in numbers in terms of categories of where they're proposed to be appropriated for the coming year. So as you are aware from past years, there are really 3 major sources of funds that fund our operation at the engineer's office. Are all of our capital projects, almost all of our capital projects, are expended out of the sales tax revenues out of the general fund, and we have a robust program again for 2019 that I'll review for you from that source. The motor and gas fund, the 292 fund, is primarily comes from gasoline tax and motor vehicle registration fees, and that funds basically the operation of our office and the maintenance activities related to maintaining our road and bridge system. And then we have a fund that is the MPDES Stormwater Phase 2 fund. We came under EPA regulations 10+ years ago for comply with water quality standards, and so there's a function of our office that performs compliance with those EPA regulations for stormwater quality, and that fund is 100% funded by fees and services for mainly developing activities that cause the need for that program. So those are the 3 areas that we generally or that we are budgeting the revenues for. I've also provided you with a capital improvement plan that shows the county's proposed expenditures for transportation projects for the next 5 years. And we're proposing a plan that would estimate expenditures of $152 million over the next 5 years. And that would leverage an additional $126 million from other sources, so from federal, state, and other partners, whether private or public partners, on projects. The plan also includes $52 million for our operations and side of expenditures, so just to maintain our system and to run the engineer's office and do all the activities related to road and bridge maintenance. We're proposing $4 million for what we're calling grants to other local governments. As you're aware, we continue to offer matching funds for other entities, other political subdivisions in Delaware County, to apply for OPWC funding and match their local share match in order to try to get more state money brought back into Delaware County, not into our budget, but into the county as a whole, expenditure-wise. And we're proposing also an ongoing commitment to the TID would also be included in that $4 million figure, and then $10 million in debt service over that 5-year period for the bonds on the Sawmill Parkway project. The revenues for the capital improvement plan assume $174 million in total revenue, and those are from the traditional sources. But in order to make that system or that plan work over that 5-year period, we're proposing bonding $25.6 million to cover primarily the large expenditure for our share of the Big Walnut Interchange project and the Phase 4 of the Home Road extension, which would be the bridge over the railroad tracks and the connection up to Lewis Center Road from the Slate Ridge project up to Lewis Center. The important part I think to realize about our capital improvement plan is that in year 5, that $25 million in bond revenues gets us to zero in terms of our balance, and so that's not a position we want to be in, and so we continue to talk about the revenues and talk about how we implement that plan. I would point out to you that I'll be asking you in the near future on your agenda to consider an increase in the license plate fee for Delaware County. It'd be a $5 increase that's been permitted by the legislature in 2018, or excuse me, 2017 was approved to give counties the ability to increase their license fee, and it's been since the 1980s since the last time the fee was increased for a license fee for Delaware County. So I think a $5 increase is.
This is a fee that's specific to counties.
It is, yes. And
just for the record.
It's the fee associated with purchasing a motor vehicle. So $5 increase. There are roughly a little over 200,000 registered vehicles in Delaware County, so it would generate about $1 million a year. We'll talk more about that in those hearings, but I thought in the context of us looking at budget and looking beyond the coming year, it's time for us to be thinking about doing that to shore up our position in terms of being able to operate and maintain the system that we continue to expand and build. So that's my overview. We've provided you with several documents that the 5-year plan and also a list of projects that we're proposing under this year's budget. And I don't know how detailed you want to get into those projects, but I guess at this point I'd be glad to answer any questions about any topic related to our budget, and we can go through it line by line if you choose to. It's up to you.
Any questions from the board at this point?
I did have a question on the accounting treatment, changing from, expensing a lot of the improvements, or from capitalizing a lot of the improvements to expensing them. How would you differentiate between what's capital and what's maintenance, like in major renovations where you're widening a road, adding lanes or whatever? Is that considered capital, or?
Yeah, it's basically the portion where if we do a project where we are widening a road, adding capacity in terms of traffic capacity, that portion which expands the width of the road would be capitalized. The portion that simply rebuilds the existing roadbed would be expensed.
Okay. Okay.
Because we do unit price contracts, we can easily calculate how
Differentiate.
much of it's existing, how much of it's widened or expanded, and apply those units to that.
Right.
Treat that accordingly.
Right. Yeah, I think it's important that, like you said, it's not really it's not really much of a change in terms of cash flow. I mean, the accounting treatment may change, but cash flow wise, you're still at zero at the end of 5 years.
Just a different sub-pot that we're showing it in, and the bottom line's still the same.
Yeah, but to the auditors and GAAP statements, it
Makes a
could be,
difference to them.
yeah, it could make a fair amount of difference. So you know, on your plan for 2019, I would like to see maybe a discussion of the bigger items, certainly not every single line item, because we'd be here all day.
Rob sent over,
Yeah.
this, you have this sheet here in front of you that, okay. So, most of the larger capital expenditures are on here. If you look at, the very top, 5301 contracted professional services, aside from our ongoing, partnering funding with the Soil and Water District, in the blue column, which is mainly gas tax revenue from the general fund, that'll show a list of projects that we are under design and planning for. So those are projects that we have consulting contracts, or we plan to go out and engage in a consulting contract in the coming year. So where you see TBD, so to be determined, would be that we have not yet selected a consultant, but would propose to do so. So you'll see some of the projects on here are pretty large in scope. So the Africa Road from Worthington to Big Walnut Road, pretty good sized project. The a railroad, starting the design on a railroad grade separation on Cheshire Road, obviously a big project. We've got 2 phases of the Home Road extension, or 2 contracts for the Home Road extension through Slate Ridge under design right now. And then we have an ongoing contract that for all the material testing and inspection, technical and laboratory inspection tests related to development projects and our own capital improvement projects. So that very last item under professional services involves not just our own contracts, capital contracts, but also development contracts that are reimbursed to us by consultants, or excuse me, by developers. The road and bridge preservation and maintenance projects are mainly every year we do an annual resurfacing, surface treatment contract project, and a couple small bridge projects, and including the removal of the old Orange Road Bridge, the truss bridge.
Yeah, that is going to come down?
That,
Okay.
hopefully.
Hopefully.
Yeah. And,
The one's not used?
yeah.
Yeah, the metal,
At one time, somebody wanted to make it a,
And we'll still pursue, if we can, removing that in a way that can be reused.
but as I recall, it was like $600,000, $700,000, $800,000 to do that. That doesn't make economic sense.
Before we go out, and we'll make sure there's no reuse. It is a historic structure, and we did make a commitment to ODNR when they permitted a new bridge to be built on a new alignment, that the old one would come down. So we're obligated to take it down.
Is there a time frame? Because it's been, what, 3-4 years?
We're well past the time frame of our commitment, and but there have been ongoing discussions about reusing that, and so we wanted to be respectful of that when we do take it down. So There's more discussion to follow on that, but I wanted to make sure you were aware it's in the
Yeah.
budgets.
Yeah.
As you know from ongoing right-of-way contract purchases, there's always a large component of right-of-way acquisition affiliated with any of these projects, and 5402 details those projects with major right-of-way acquisition and some estimates for those.
What's the timeline for the 315 to Route 23 widening a home road? Right-of-way acquisition next year?
Yes, right-of-way acquisition next year, and then our plan will be to start construction in 2020, probably summer, fall 2020, that area of 2021.
So if these projects are listed on here, we're anticipating acquiring the right-of-way in 2019. The 5405, we have to hire appraisal services, and on some projects, we hire consultants to do the actual acquisition for us. So those are listed under 5405. We have a salt storage building to add to our salt storage capacity on the piece of ground at Sawmill and Hyatt's that the county owns. And then 5420 lists our road construction projects. So these will be actual construction starting in 2019. So Home Road and 315 intersection, Hyatt's and 23, Lewis Center North Road, Liberty Seldom Seen, the remaining portion of Pyatt Road, so from Cheshire Road up to the portion that's just south of the school. The phase 1 of Old 3C, Worthington and Freeman. The East Powell Road will start in 2019, not be completed in 19, but that's the section basically from where the phase 1 ended at Bale Kenyon, taking that on over to where the old state improvements stopped on Powell Road. We've got, though South Old State is largely complete, there's still grading and seeding and wrap-up work there left with that project. So we'll wrap up the South Old State project, and then we've listed because of the funding source, the engineering services for Big Walnut. We still have a federal set-aside that's paying for the design work on the Big Walnut interchange. So we're anticipating $1 million of that.
What's FHWA?
Federal Highway Administration.
Okay.
So that the Congressman T-Berry years ago was successful in getting us a set-aside for that project, and those monies get allocated at the federal level, not at the state's discretion. And so every state gets an allocation from the Federal Highway Administration, but those set-asides get carved out of that before the money goes to the state. So we've designated that as FHWA, not as ODOT.
So what is the timeline on that one then? Assuming we do the
For
design.
Big Walnut?
Yeah.
Our hope would be to get into detailed engineering next year. We still have some preliminary design work to do before we can actually start engineering and construction plans. But the schedule we've provided and are assuming the schedule we presented to ODOT is to start construction in 2023. As much as we'd like to build it sooner, I don't think it's realistic. We've got a tremendous amount of work yet to do in terms of permits and approvals. Though there's not a huge amount of land that's needed, we do have to go through the acquisition. There's a handful of parcels that will be needed, so that chews up the better part of a year just for that portion.
So that project is a go, though? It's just a matter of when?
Well, I wouldn't say it's a go. Unfortunately, we have
Yeah,
There are a
okay.
series of approvals we still have to get, but everything up to this point has been favorable. The response we've had from ODOT and Federal Highway has been favorable. We'll know a lot more a year from now what the future holds.
Are you anticipating more federal funding in addition to what you've just listed here?
For Big Walnut,
Yes,
more than this million?
yes.
Yes.
Okay,
Rob presented to the TRAC, Transportation Resource Advisory Council, for ODOT just a month ago and updated our proposal to them. You want to outline that for them?
So basically, we have the interchange broken into 3 or 4 different phases. Phase 1 would include what you'd think of with the interchange, the ramps, the bridges over Big Walnut Road.
all right, yeah.
The total cost of that phase is about $36 million. We currently have a little over $3 million remaining from that set aside that Chris mentioned, which should get us through the engineering phase. We will be going back to ODOT next year and asking for $10 million of federal funding for that phase, which still leaves in excess of $20 million that we would have to come up with. I would expect to go in 2020, make an application to Morpsey. Morpsey divvies up another pot of federal funds to all the local agencies in central Ohio. I would expect to ask somewhere between $7 and $10 million from Morpsey in 2020, so that the balance would have to come from us.
Can I ask a question, just for I'm sorry.
No, go ahead, sorry. I'm done. Yeah.
I apologize. First of all, I apologize, my phone, I didn't have it on vibrate. And it was a question, this 5-year plan, it gets us to 0 after 5 years, which is not the position any of us want to be in. How much of the Big Walnut, if any, is in that 5-year number? Because that kind of gives some idea of how critical we are. If that's in the number, it's different than if it isn't in the number.
It is in the numbers.
Okay.
In 2023, we have an estimated expense of $11.76 million. Basically, the thought is ODOT will manage the construction phase of the project, but they will need for us to deposit all our funds up front before they advertise the construction contract. So I would expect a pretty significant outlay sometime in 2023 before the construction contract is advertised.
So, doing round math in my head, if it was 30, did you say 32 million or something like that, and then
36 million.
36 million, and 10 million from the state, we hope, puts it to 26. Morpsey, another 10,
7 to 10 is what we're hoping.
so I guess it's about 19. Again, we're just rounding.
Yes.
So the expectation is the county, through your funds, will be roughly 19 million?
The
Our
36
best
includes right-of-way and engineering, so the total construction cost is more, it's in the high 20s. So 10 million from TRAC, 7 to 10 million from Morpsey, and then 11 million from us would be the construction contract.
Okay. But that question really was, is that in the number? And it is,
Yes,
so
it
it'd be even scary if it wasn't in the number.
The Lewis Center North Road project is scheduled for next summer. I know we've talked about that, but that's also right near the Parade of Homes, unfortunately. And the Parade of Homes traffic a lot of it would flow right through there. What about alternatives, and have we considered how to, because the Parade of Homes is an attractive activity for the county, so I'm just curious what you've been thinking on the Parade of Homes.
I have a meeting tomorrow with John Mauke, and I'm guessing that's going to be the
Topic.
biggest item on our agenda.
Yeah.
We're in a little bit of a precarious situation.
I know.
We've awarded a contract for this project before we were aware the Parade of Homes was coming. So if we delay, if we make accommodation for opening back up, temporary opening or traffic control, there will be significant expense related to that. The contractor's not under the obligation to
Right.
accommodate that.
And potentially delay, which could hurt the school.
That's right.
The
So,
whole
yeah,
reason we're doing it then.
We're in a tough situation because it does push the closing back further on the section from North Road over to the school. So, it's a matter of who we want to antagonize. But I think there's a way for us from a traffic control standpoint to still direct people to the parade, even with the closure. It creates the chaos that maybe some people are anticipating.
Okay.
We can try to work through that, but ultimately, we're gonna, you and I will have to decide whether we want to incur additional costs under a contract if we delay the project to accommodate the parade.
Right. Okay.
I think we need to know more than we know right now, but your meeting tomorrow may provide some of that. And the other thing that the North Road, at some point, that has to be, that could be widened. So the reason I bring it up is I had a conversation with someone and talked about this sports facility coming in, and my comment, my observation to the person that brought it to my attention was, we got to be careful that we don't have to make alternative arrangements for a road that would add a lot of extra expense when that project, if it was delayed a year, could solve that problem. And I'm just speaking off the top of my head when it came up, and I'm not sure how familiar you are with that project, but someone suggested it was going to be open next year, which seems a little quick.
That seems optimistic, yeah. That seems optimistic.
Yeah, so if it's delayed a year, I think it kind of solves itself. You look like the first you've heard of this, or?
I'm not sure what facility.
Called Project Grand Slam. It's in
It's going to be on
Evans Farm.
Evans, it's going to be this huge athletic complex, and they're supposed to be, their entrance, their expectation is it's going to be on North Road. And my comment was, it'd be a lot better if that comes in after we get North Road expanded. But I didn't know enough to say more than that. So if you didn't know about it, just consider that an
The
FYI.
widening that we have anticipated with North Road is related to development activity along there. I think we've got some commitments from funding from those developers to help pay for that widening. But I don't think the traffic studies associated with that.
So that wasn't planned for next,
Contemplated this.
that wasn't planned for next year, then, North
Project that you're
Road?
talking about.
Yeah, the North Road widening will be done by the first part of June.
Okay, will be, okay.
That'll be the first phase of the project.
Were you aware they were thinking about access would be to North Road? That's what I was told. I'm not saying I'm correct.
There's, Orange Township has built a soccer facility off of North Road. The Grand Slam, the ballpark, I guess, what I've been told is that would be on the east side of the railroad off of High Road Extension.
That's what I thought as
I might
well.
have heard that wrong.
And I'm not saying I'm correct. I
I know the soccer facility is off North Road. That's mostly done, if not completely done right now.
anyway. Anything else?
On just a math question, on the motor and gas fund, column B, you've got total road and bridge projects and other capital aids of 4.6 million. I don't know if I'm reading that correctly, but if you go back to the various categories,
Which document are you looking at, Jeff?
the two-page 2019 road and bridge projects,
Okay.
and the second page, the total shows 4.6 million under column B.
Yes.
I look at the subcategories, and it adds up to about 12 million. So I don't know,
We've got it wrong. I know I had to update that at one point. I may have sent you the old sheet. I sent you the updated one, because I caught that at one point, and I think I sent you the old one instead. Sorry.
One other math error you were pointing out to me also on
Yes.
that, you want to go ahead and highlight that?
Well, the in column A, that South Old State Road, the major expenses under $54.2 million, that's actually under 292. So, the grand total request we're making of the general fund is 25.47, not 26. Again, that column A, I had $1 million more on column there. And then, we do have one other, under our revenues, we have one more, revenues that, what we've shown is in the 5-year plan is correct, but what's in the, one solution report, there's another 670,000, in revenues. We'll see about $9.5 million in total oil and gas revenues next year. That report should be
The reason I raised it was if you add up the 4 columns with the 4.6, it's only about 32 million, 32 to 33 million. But if you add up, including 12 million, it's close to 40 million. So a big difference, 33 versus 39. So I think what you're saying is it is 39, the correct number. So, and I know you've laid it out very well in terms of how the numbers in the long run, you know, are negative, well, they're negative year by year cash flow wise, and we run out of money in 2023. So I just wanted to understand what the total spending is for next year. It is
But the 5-year number is is based on the corrected number, not the bad number. So just make sure.
It doesn't compound the problem.
right. Right.
Just making sure.
No, it's a good question.
Will you get us a new sheet, the corrected sheet?
I did have a question on, under road construction, and you just mentioned it, the South Old 3C Highway Phase 1. Now, what did you say about that? And that's 4.4 million. And what is Phase 1 again?
Yeah, Old 3C Phase 1 is the, basically rebuilding Old 3C from Mount Royal to Freeman Road. Including curb and gutter, storm sewer.
Oh, okay.
A new traffic signal at the middle school entrance, adding sidewalk, crosswalks, that sort of thing.
Okay.
Phase 2, we've deferred, made it into Phase 2. That will be an upgrade at the intersection of Mount Royal and Old 3C. We've pushed that off for a couple different reasons.
Yes, right. Okay.
If you've been by there recently, there's a lot of activity, but it's utility relocation that's in advance of this actual road construction work. So there's gas, water line relocation.
Okay. When is that expected then to be done as far as the upgrade to Mount Royal, roughly?
The Phase 2, we don't have a time frame for that
Okay.
right now. One of the reasons we deferred that, and made it Phase 2, as much as we'd love to come up with a perfect solution to that
Yeah,
intersection,
that's
there's really no
tough.
perfect solution because of
Right.
how close it sits to Route 3. So, Jim, since ODOT resurfaced Route 3 2 years ago, and they made a dual left turn lane off of Mount Royal and changed the signal operation, that's helped a lot just since then. So we're keeping an eye on the crash history at Mount Royal, and it's steady, if not declining a little bit for
Okay.
whatever reason. So I don't think there's quite as big of a rush to do that as there was several years
Sure.
ago.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Any other questions?
Not for 19.
Let me just close by saying thank you for your ongoing support to transportation. I think, obviously, I'm a little biased in terms of the importance of transportation, but I think as we talk to the public about what the issues are for them as Delaware County residents, transportation, congestion, road safety are at or near the top of the list in most of those conversations. I appreciate you understanding that, and not just understanding it, but making the funding available to address those things. So thank you for your ongoing support. I had a moment of reflection over the weekend as I was kind of looking through these things, and I remember that my first budget as county engineer in 1997 was $3.2 million was the total budget, and the capital portion of that, we had $300,000 for paving Sunbury Road, and that was the extent of our capital program, was that one resurfacing project. So that's how far we've come, not just budgetarily, but in terms of the demands that the growth has brought to our transportation system is staggering, so.
That's 1 month's spending now.
Yeah, isn't that amazing?
Big change.
Yeah.
Big change. I did have a couple other questions, comments I'd like to cover. You know, the 25 million in debt you've built in, I think that's an important discussion, you know, that we need to have, because obviously we're going to continue to pay off other debt, and, you know, so I think that's part of our overall debt management program to make sure that the county's debt load and debt service is at an appropriate level. It's very manageable right now, but, and do you, have you done actually a 10-year projection on projects that you know need to be done, but like Big Walnut is only started in '23?
We haven't done the full analysis the level of analysis that we've done here. You'll note at the end of our plan, there are some reserve projects. So there are other projects that could be plugged in or that we've identified beyond that 5-year window.
Mm-hmm. Not done it to the detail by year in 6 through 10, years 6 through 10? Okay, okay. I know.
It's something, if that's something you'd like for us to do, we could do that. Obviously, our vision gets blurrier the farther we go out in projecting that, but it doesn't mean we can't do that if that's something you'd like.
Yeah, I'm okay with not doing it. I was just curious if you had it. I know we've got some money to be allocated to the TID, and I think that's something we're all very interested in doing more with. So I'm curious, just kind of a comment on how you've come up with the numbers that you came up with and so on.
We're proposing still an allocation of $200,000 transferred to the TID out of the 18 budget. We're proposing $400,000 next year and ongoing in the following years. But as specific TID projects come up, that obviously could change based on the specifics of the project. Some of the projects we've listed in our 5-year plan may end up being administered by the TID and not through the traditional budgeting process, but.
So it wouldn't change the grand total necessarily. If anything, it might improve it a little bit because the TID could do it quicker and cheaper. Right. So, yeah, okay. We've got the TIF dollars included in the 5-year projections I saw. What about the reimbursement on the Old State project? I know that's 80%, 85%, whatever it was.
We'll see $3+ million of that. We have an invoice out for that this year. We'll see that in 2018. We still expect, and about, is it 3.9? There's 3.9 for this year and for 19 and for 20.
So almost $4 million payments over the next year. Are those factored in? Okay, that's what I thought. Darn it.
Now, do you get any consideration for overseeing the project? Do you get an administrative fee or? Just curious.
Those costs are allowable costs under the federal. ODOT's contribution to this project is being provided in terms of them providing the day-to-day.
I guess you're also doing it for Columbus, the Old State project, a portion that's in Columbus. Do we get any administrative fee for overseeing that part of the project? I guess is my question.
We don't get an administrative fee. We are eligible to collect reimbursement for what we call construction engineering, and that has to be billed in a certain way. That's when you have actually people out in the field working specifically on the construction phase of the project. We actually contracted that work to the city of Columbus because, well, for a number of reasons, they had the staff available to do it, but also they would have had to have been involved in the Columbus portion. So, frankly, it just made sense to have Columbus administer or do the
Sorry, didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, that's all I had, actually.
Just have one, maybe it's more of a clarification, like the overpass that will extend Home Road to Lewis Center. That's, will be paid ultimately out of TIF funds, I believe, at least that's the goal. And so although that'll be bonded, there'll be a revenue source to back up those bonds.
That's our hope, yeah.
Yeah, that's question
I think
slash statement, I think.
How definitive that is at the time those TIF revenues are, will have a lot to do with whether we issue that debt or not. Won't it? So, that picture will be clearer in a few years, I think.
And we've made the assumption of basically $14 million in 2023, issuing bonds of $14 million backed by the Slate Ridge TIF revenues.
By then, we should have a pretty clear idea.
Yes.
What about just a general comment on 36, 37, 71, and Wilson Road, and everything that's going on out there? I know we're
There's
not,
no budgetary impact for us there.
yeah, we're not really, yeah.
From just an informational standpoint, I think there was a key date for ODOT in terms of moving forward with the project based on developer, the North Gate developer, paying for the design for the interchange. And there was a date where all that was, ODOT had some milestone dates. Those dates haven't been met yet. The construction engineering hasn't been advanced by the developer at this point. So for every year that doesn't happen, it pushes the construction of the interchange back. So they were talking about a potential 2019 start a year ago. We're talking about starting construction in 19. Now the engineering plans aren't there to back that up yet. So that's what I know about that.
But once the interchange is built, correct me if I'm wrong, I'm sure you will, there will be a need to build like auxiliary roads from the interchange up to 36, 37. Will that fall in the county in your expectation? Some of that's in Sunbury since they annexed. I guess you would assume they would pay for their portion.
There are 5 or 6 phases of that interchange project. There's the actual interchange proper with the ramps and that would connect to Wilson Road on the east side and would connect ideally to Four Winds Drive, an extension of Four Winds Drive on the west side. But the other phases of the project include an extension of that interchange, what they're calling Sunbury Parkway, running parallel to 36, all the way over to Sunbury to the east, and then an extension up to 36, 37 near Africa Road as another phase of that project. The funding, there's been no formal request to the county to pay for any of those at this point, but when you look at the total number, is it $150 million or 180? I mean, it's a big number. I can't imagine that at some point the county won't get, that we won't get approached about participating in that. I think the question for us will be, well, what kind of development's going to be happening, and what, if we would agree to participate, it ought to be based on some development incentive, not just on just going out and building a road, because it's a state route and an interstate highway. It really is not the county's under our purview or our funding responsibility or jurisdiction. So, I don't know
that's my
if I answered
question.
your question or not.
Well, you did, in the sense that it's going to take more than that interchange to make that a successful area, and who's paying for it, I guess.
But it's so big, it's going to have to happen in pieces. It's not to think, I mean, barring some user that we can't really, a total home run, it's just going to happen in pieces.
Now, about a year ago, if memory serves me, you came and kind of gave us an update. Would that be something that'd be worth doing again next year sometime?
I think I actually had made myself a note to suggest to you that maybe in a work session, do not only preview what our 2019 construction program will entail, but also go over the 5-year plan at that time. So if you'd like for us to do that, I think it'd be.
Yeah,
I think it'd be very helpful,
Yeah.
because there's so much in motion,
right.
so much that could be in motion, that I think it'd be helpful to.
Yeah, and then that, like you mentioned before, that's probably the most common question we get you know, from our residents is, okay, what's happening with this project, that project, this road, et cetera. So, yeah, that updating it would be very helpful.
And along that line, I do have one very easy question, and you've told me before, the intersection there of Galena Road and 3C, it's moving along and, you know, looks great. When does the signal go up, you know?
It will be over the winter. The reason for that is the delivery of the signal poles. I've probably made a joke about this. It's not really a joke, but if you ever want to start a business, building traffic poles would be a great venture right now, because there's only 2 suppliers in the entire country.
Oh, my gosh.
And
Okay.
it's about a 5 to 6 month lead time from the time you order it until they actually deliver it. So those are ordered.
Wow.
Won't be in until tomorrow. But all the road work, all the paving and so forth.
So there must be a lot of construction going on around the country and traffic.
Yeah. And you'd think you could just stockpile signal poles, but
Yes.
they're pretty,
Right.
they're pretty,
Customized.
very unique to, they're site-specific, so
Are
there-
they?
there's really not such thing as a standard signal pole. It fits has to be designed to the
Okay.
intersection, so.
Thank you.
I asked this question, and I'll ask you, do you have any questions for us?
I don't. You, Rob? Yeah, I mentioned we'd be talking to you about the $5 permissive, and that's a 2 public hearing type process. And our intention was to have a resolution in front of you to set the hearings for that within the next week or 2. Have any objection to us moving forward and at least holding the hearings and considering that?
No objection here?
No, I think it's it's worthwhile conversation. When would it go in effect?
Has to be certified before, is it June or July? Yeah, so July 1, and then the collection would be the following January.
Okay, so it'd be
It'll still be
January 2020.
January of 20 before we start seeing revenue from that. So
Okay.
it won't have a 19 budgetary impact.
And you don't have anything in this plan, or, you know, the $1 million a year is not embedded in.
But again, that motor vehicle registration fees flow primarily to our 292.
Right.
And so we're hoping to be able to shore up our, where we're running in a deficit right now. We're spending more out of the 292 fund than we annually than we take in. We're just living off of a cash balance that we've accumulated over the years.
Well, at some point, electric vehicles, natural gas vehicles have got to be somehow,
Yeah, they got to figure it out.
they've got to pay their fair share of using the roads. And for whatever reasons, there's been an unwillingness to address that, so.
There's some good examples of other states that have done that recently. And attempted to try to bring some equity to that. But as you point out, every one of us that drives a gasoline or diesel-powered vehicle is subsidizing the electric and hybrid vehicles' use of the roadway system under our current funding structure.
Very good. Any other questions from the board?
No, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, and we look forward to the work session next year, and I guess we'll see you in a week or 2.
Great.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Always make a couple comments and I hang around for the Soil and Waters budget because we're, at least in part of the activities between the engineer's office and the Soil and Waters, we're kind of joined at the hip.
Your name's always on that ditch petition.
What's that?
Your name's always on the
Always
ditch
is.
petition.
Yeah. Well, we have a three-way agreement, as you're aware, that between your board and my office and the Soil and Water District, for them to provide various services related to the drainage maintenance program and ditch petitions. And it's something that's gone on long enough here. We just kind of take it as just take it for granted. This is just how it operates. But we're pretty unique around the state in that our office and the Soil and Water District office work so well together, and so I can't say enough good things about the work that Scott and his team do, and so I'll stick around to be part of that discussion if need be, but turn it over to them.
Very good. Thank you guys very much.
Yeah, thanks.
Thank you.
This is your second budget, I guess, isn't it? Did you do it last year, didn't you?
Third, yeah.
Third, as the time gets away.
On track, it has, yeah. So, do you want to take a quick recess, or do you want?
No, we're good. I think we're good. Just if you sit down, introduce yourselves, and you can begin.
Sure will. So Scott Stevens, the District Administrator, Delaware SWCD Administrator. Brett, go ahead.
Brett Bacon, Program Coordinator.
Also, a couple other introductions. Have with us our Board Chair, Sue Cunningham, and then our Fiscal Officer, Ted Colflesh, and then longtime board member, Steve Sheets, and then Susan Cabay there, our Fiscal Services Officer, Administrator, keeps me out of trouble. So.
She smiles like it's a full-time.
It's a full-time, yeah, she's full-time, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. So, just to start off with a few comments to echo what Chris said, we're certainly one of the top-tier soil and water conservation districts across the state, and have been widely recognized as so. And as we travel about and ask, like, how have you grown, or how's your program? And it starts with the relationship with your commissioner's office. I tell people, first and foremost, you're certainly our most ardent and steady supporter, and everything else that we do is predicated on that supported home. So certainly thankful for that, and certainly the relationship that we have with the county engineer's office, with Chris and Rob through the ditch maintenance and just the other work that we do. That's imperative for a soil and water conservation district if they want to kind of take those steps forward or to grow. That's where it starts. So certainly appreciative of that. So you have some budget information or some information. I'd be happy to go through that with you. Or if you have any specific questions about the information there, happy to just to open it up to questions. It seems like sometimes that's maybe more meaningful than me just going on
Is
what
there
I think.
any highlights you want to point out?
I think just the steady work. Certainly, you're no strangers to the 6131, to the petition, the hearings. Just the workload and the I don't want to say growth, but that increasing. Those requests seem to be nonstop. We're we had a pretty big workload there, 2005, 2006. We're back at that level at this point. I think certainly it seems to be somewhat related to the economy. As things improve on that nature, people start to look out and think about other issues, kind of those looming, and they're big ticket projects. There's no doubt about it. With the assessments that go to the landowners, it's certainly tied to that. So you can see that the third page then just kind of our other technical assistance. You can see there's not a township in the county that we don't have outreach into, and a lot of it's drainage. I mean, always drainage concerns with landowners have been the kind of the long time, kind of the high point for us. But there's other erosion sediment control, some stream bank work, and just kind of general education and outreach is where we have good. I like to see that map, that we're not always going to the east side or the west side or the south part of the county. We're fortunately a good resource and used throughout the county and all the townships. So.
When you say drainage petition projects, those are projects that are currently under construction?
In various stages, everything from the Gorsuch project that we just had viewing, so we're not through the first hearing.
Anywhere from viewing to final, okay.
Not accepted on the maintenance yet, so.
As many viewings as we go to, it seems like it should be more than that.
Yeah, it's one per project unless we have to reset. On that note, you know, we do informational meetings with the landowners, kind of leading up to or as you know, predecessor to the actual viewing and hearings. And we've probably done, what, 10 or a dozen of those. We actually have one tonight as well. So there's I think to think about that workload and how that would at least stay steady or even continue to grow, the opportunity is certainly there, interest throughout the county in that. So, and we've structured ourselves, you may know, kind of my second, maybe third budget hearing is with the retirements of Larry and then most recently Mill. We've tried to restructure the office in a way to meet the field, the technical demand of that, and try to get, I'll say maybe a little more tech heavy and less administration heavy in that. So, because we know it's coming. I mean, it's certainly out there, and when we look at the infrastructure, the drainage infrastructure across the county, you know, there are so many old projects out there in that, you know, 80, 90, 100-year-old plus thing, you know, kind of lifespan. They've met or exceeded their lifespan. So it's coming, and that's not just a Delaware County thing. When we talk to other soil and water districts or just the Corn Belt in general, that age of rural drainage infrastructure is a huge issue out there. It's we're just getting started, quite honestly.
Could you just give a quick overview of how 2018 is shaping up? Revenue and dollars, revenue and spending?
We're right on target with our budget. The one I guess wild card for us is always state match and how that's going to shake out. We actually saw a little increase, and state match goes from the state fiscal year, so May June to May June of this year to next. That's predicated on what other soil and water conservation districts are doing locally as far as what those matchable dollars are. We were able to work with your staff and the county auditor staff to kind of restructure some dollars that we get locally to have them become matchable that we hadn't matched in the future. But that's still an issue. I mean, there's $10 million of state match. It's going to be divvied out on a percentage to all the soil and water conservation districts across the state, and we all managed to grow our budgets locally, so that somewhat dilutes the pool, our percentage of state match. We're down to roughly 50 cents on the dollar. State law would authorize a one-to-one, a dollar-for-dollar match there. And I'll be the first to say that's something that as a family of soil and water districts statewide, we have struggled greatly with the state legislature to get on the radar, on the agenda there to explore ways to expand that. Incidentally, Bonnie Daly, a deputy administrator, is not with us today. She's at the Department of Agriculture with our Employees Association discussing with the Ohio Federation of Soil and Water Districts kind of with the new, we just went through an election, the new administration, the Kasich administration on the way out, just a strategy or opportunities to explore to partner better, or to have those dollars come in and make that a more meaningful match on the local end. So,
how much you've got budgeted? $324,000 from the commissioners. How much is it?
That'd be roughly a 2.8% increase. We were at $315,000 in 18.
Okay.
And what'd you ask for last year, 315?
It was like 312. It was the same 2.8%, and we received a little more than our ask. I think you most generously rounded up for us, so certainly appreciate that.
And how much cash does the ditch program have in reserve now? I know it's a significant dollar amount.
Yeah, that'd be the line item 4231, the services to the county petition projects. We've been at that 20,000 or so, but with the restructuring of the staff, that will continue to grow as we're able to service those projects.
No, the cash balance in the reserve.
Oh, I'm sorry, the drainage maintenance account. So wholly separate dollars there.
Right.
That would be the last. I don't know if that was.
It was $7 million or something like that last year.
$8 million.
And that still is roughly about the 7% to 8% of the total base value. And as we've discussed previously, our goal would be to try to grow that cash balance up to the 20% that the law would specify. I don't know that we ever actually approach the 20%, but I think having a goal of having that that total cash on hand be 15% or so of the total base value is.
So you'd need to more than double it to get to the
Right.
20%.
We would grow in 2019 with our collections as they are certified, would grow that account by just a little under $600,000 in 2019.
And that's what you've been doing roughly, isn't it?
The total
$500,000.
percentage, as you look back, the total percentage of our base value has remained right around that 7 to 8% amount. We're looking at things maybe in a little longer term view now and trying to project out what our costs will be and grow those revenues so that not only are we meeting, our annual costs every year, but also kind of building in that growth as a factor in the the assessment as well.
So the 8 million is what now?
That's the total cash on hand for drainage maintenance.
Okay.
But each project has to maintain its own fund, right?
Correct.
You don't, so that 8 million is a combination of all those funds.
That's correct.
But you really has to be specific to the, other than I'm assuming the administrative, which I assume would come to soil and water to offset staff costs, et cetera.
Yeah, we bill costs those costs we consider or call them indirect costs, which would be any cost that's incurred by the district or by the drainage maintenance.
I get my point is those costs help offset your payroll.
Absolutely.
I just wanted
Yes,
confirmation what I
absolutely.
thought I understood.
About half of our 14 staff would have primary day-to-day responsibilities to the drainage maintenance
Okay.
program.
Okay.
We budgeted for 19, it would be just a little under $600,000 would be the reimbursement from drainage maintenance to
Oh,
the
that's what
SWCD
okay.
for staff. And then we have about $50,000 in operating costs, just the overhead, copiers and, kind of that general, keep the lights on.
And you plan, I think we just had a casual conversation, but you do plan to occasionally reevaluate to make sure you're getting a large enough reserve to cover the future cost of these projects, much like an insurance company would do?
I would say more frequently than occasionally, yes.
Yeah.
I'm already starting to look at the costs that have been incurred in 2018. Obviously, those aren't complete yet, but starting to project those onto some of the projections that we provided you in May when we presented the inspection report and, evaluate how accurate are our projections and then where do we need to go from there.
That's an extremely important thing because worst thing could happen is we're underfunded down the road. And we would all really be responsible for that, so. Other questions?
There's about an 8% increase in compensation, total compensation. If my math is right, you're going from 341 to 371. It's about 30,000, 8+%. And yet the salary dollars are down a little bit.
Health insurance would be one of the big drivers of that. Significant portion would be health insurance cost. You can see, we actually went up with the 3-tier structuring. You can see there, I think it's about the third page of the budget there. I'm sorry, second page. The 7 family and when we went to the employee plus spouse, that was
4-tier.
yeah.
It uniquely caused an increase in healthcare costs.
Right, and by percentage for us, that's a significant part of our budget. You can see we're looking at 248,000 total. So
Okay.
that's,
Because, healthcare overall didn't go up.
No, it's just what happened to be the way it impacted just the nature of our staff. So the other thing that I look at with the 4 employees there at the single rate, that I would anticipate that would change, and that's a significant jump by percentage for us. That would be a big jump at the point in time that would change. Hopefully that kind of phases in over time, and they all don't decide to do something in the
You are on the county's plan though, right?
Yes, we are. Yes.
I don't think it's the case, and I think it's probably because you're not under the commissioners or the county, but and it's more for you guys, we ought to have the same prior years to look at that we have for all the other departments. I don't see that in here.
Okay, we can certainly do.
It helps us make an evaluation, and I think we struggle by trying to make that comparison when we don't have the prior years like we have for everyone else, so.
We have just some real high-level summary numbers from 18
Yeah.
to compare, like salary.
Yeah, we didn't
down a
have,
little
we
bit.
didn't have what
Okay.
occurred this year. If you would get with them and.
Sure.
Work out, and get on the county model,
Okay,
so that just makes it easier for us, apples, if there's examples and apples, it's easier.
yes, absolutely. We can, if there's a certain, I'll work with your staff, then there's a certain format that the other offices have shared that in. We don't actually, you enter our budget into your system, we don't actually have
So will you work
access
with
to
Soil and Water on that? So, okay.
Great.
Other questions?
I don't.
Oh, are you guys planning to move to the Career
Oh,
Center?
boy, are we. Yeah, today would be fantastic. We'll go back and start. No, I looking forward to that. I think
It
it's
makes
gonna be-
sense.
Oh,
I thought you
absolutely.
were, I just wanted to.
Absolutely.
we're
I'll
getting-
work certainly with the county engineer's office, but we also have quite a bit of involvement with the code compliance office as far as the drainage protection reviews and just coordinating efforts there. Can't happen soon enough as far as we're
You're
concerned.
paying rent where you're currently at?
We are.
I assume there'll be some sort of allocation when you move?
Yes, we need to talk about that or sort that out, how it would work. And I've made mention of this to Mike and the staff there. You know, about a third of our budget is predicated on state match. So if we were to lose some part of that general fund, that local appropriation, we'll have to be cautious or mindful in how we structure that. So to actually pay rent back,
Yeah.
if that's in some way, I don't know how we can do that, but that's something we have to be aware of.
Right. We can work with you on that.
And does
We'll work with you on that.
Does your current lease expire into next year? Or is there
We're on a
Month-to-month?
month-to-month at this point. We've been in that facility since the summer of 1996. Dave Gordon is the owner of our facility, and he's abundantly aware of the county's move to consolidate or to move, and he knows that we're part of that, so he knows it's coming at some point, so.
Yeah, that's it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Lewis?
No, thank you.
I just want to, the other two would say the same thing, but as president, I'm always amazed and impressed with the quality of work that you guys do. I think people know best the people we're out doing the viewings with. So it used to be Scott, now it's Brett, and everyone behind the scenes. You guys are extremely professional. We're fortunate that you're part of our county, and I think it's kind of what Chris and Rob were saying earlier. So I just want to reinforce the relationship, the partnership, and we have one goal in mind, that's what's best for the taxpayers in our county. And it's just a great program you guys oversee for the benefit of our taxpayers, so thank you.
Thank you very much.
Anything else? She's over afraid I'm going to adjourn rather than recess. She's paranoid about this time every meeting.
Everybody has somebody to keep them out of trouble, right?
I just wanted to reassure her before so we are now in recess until 1 o'clock this afternoon.